The first thing you need to understand about humans is that they're absolutely terrible at being extinct. Trust me, I should know. I'm Commander Vex-Nine of the Kaltharian Empire, and I've been trying to wipe them out for the past 7 years. 7 years. Do you know how long it takes us to eliminate most species? Usually about 6 standard rotations. These pink-skinned lunatics have made it a personal hobby to ruin my career advancement prospects. Sir, my aide, Quinn 12, whispered nervously as he approached my command throne. The casualty reports from Earth are disturbing. I didn't look up from the holographic display showing our latest bombardment results. 3 billion humans dead. 3 billion. That should have been enough to break any civilized species. Instead, the survivors were doing something so fundamentally wrong that it made my secondary stomach churn. Define disturbing, Quinn, I said, my voice carrying that particular tone that made junior officers' tentacles go limp with fear. Well, sir, they're laughing. I finally looked up. Quinn's purple skin had gone pale, almost translucent. His 4 eyes were darting around like he expected humans to burst through the walls at any moment. Which, knowing humans, wasn't entirely impossible. Laughing? I repeated slowly. At the death of 3 billion of their own species? Not at the deaths, sir. At us. They're calling us, and I quote from their intercepted communications. Discount Darth Vader wannabes with commitment issues. I felt my primary heart skip a beat. In 7 years of warfare, I'd learned that human humor was directly proportional to how much trouble you were in. The funnier they found you, the more likely you were to wake up dead. Show me the surveillance footage from the underground bunkers, I commanded. The holographic display shifted to show a cramped human shelter somewhere beneath the ruins of what they called New Amsterdam. The lighting was terrible, the air recycling system was clearly failing, and they were eating what appeared to be processed protein bars that looked like compressed dirt, and they were telling jokes. A woman with short-cropped red hair was addressing a group of survivors. Her name tag read Dr. Elena Voss. She was holding what appeared to be a badly damaged tablet, but her expression was excited? No, that wasn't quite right. She looked like someone who just figured out the punchline to a particularly elaborate joke. All right, people, she said, her voice carrying clearly through our audio pickups. The good news is that our new friends upstairs just gave us the best gift possible. A man with a thick beard raised his hand. Doc, with all due respect, my wife and kids are dead. I'm not seeing the gift part. Dr. Voss nodded sympathetically. I understand, Marcus. But here's the thing. These purple morons just made the biggest tactical error in military history. They killed enough of us to make us stop caring about the Geneva Convention. The group went quiet. I leaned forward in my command throne. What in the 7 hells was the Geneva Convention? Quinn, I said, access the human databases. Find me information on this Geneva Convention. While Quinn fumbled with the controls, Dr. Voss continued speaking. For the past 7 years, we've been fighting with our hands tied behind our backs. We've been trying to be civilized, to follow the rules of warfare, to maintain our humanity in the face of extinction. But you know what? When someone kills 3 billion of your people, being civilized becomes optional. The bearded man, Marcus, was grinning now. It was not a pleasant expression. Doc, are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that Project Nightfall just got approved by the surviving members of the Global Defense Council. All of them. Unanimously. Even the Swiss representative voted yes, and those people haven't agreed to violence since the invention of chocolate. My blood ran cold. Project Nightfall? I'd never heard of any Project Nightfall in our intelligence reports. Sir, Quinn said, his voice higher than usual, I've accessed their databases. The Geneva Convention appears to be a set of rules governing warfare. It prohibits the use of chemical weapons, biological weapons, torture, and something called crimes against humanity. And? Sir, it appears that by killing 3 billion civilians, we've violated approximately 47 different articles of this convention. I stared at him. So? We're conquering them, not playing by their rules. Sir, I think you're missing the point. The Geneva Convention isn't about what they'll do to us. It's about what they've been restraining themselves from doing to us. The implications hit me like a plasma torpedo to the face. I turned back to the surveillance footage just in time to see Dr. Voss pull up a new display on her tablet. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, meet the Kaltharian Extinction Protocol. Phase 1 begins in approximately 6 hours. The display showed technical schematics that made absolutely no sense to me. Biological diagrams, chemical formulas, something that looked like a DNA helix being rearranged by tiny mechanical devices. What am I looking at? I demanded. Quinn was frantically working at his console. Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from approximately 47 different locations across the planet. They're activating something. On the screen, Dr. Voss was still talking. The Kaltharians made a fundamental error in their understanding of human psychology. They assumed that because we're not as technologically advanced as they are, we're not as dangerous. They forgot that we're the species that invented nuclear weapons and then spent 50 years pointing them at ourselves just to see who would blink first. Marcus was laughing now, but it was the kind of laughter that suggested someone had finally snapped. Doc, are you telling me that we've been holding back? Marcus, we've been holding back so hard that we've been fighting this war with the equivalent of stern letters and harsh language. But here's the beautiful part, they have no idea what humans are actually capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized. I felt my secondary heart join my primary heart in doing uncomfortable things. Quinn, get me a direct line to Fleet Command. I want to know everything about human military capabilities. Everything. Sir, according to our intelligence reports, humans have primitive projectile weapons, basic chemical propulsion, and limited nuclear capabilities. They're approximately 3,000 years behind us technologically. Then explain to me why I have a feeling that we're about to discover what the word underestimate means. On screen, Dr. Voss had moved to a new display. This one showed a star map of our fleet positions. Somehow, impossibly, they had tracked the exact location of every single one of our ships. The Kaltharians think they're hunters, she said, her voice taking on an edge that made my spines tingle. They think they're the apex predators of the galaxy. But here's the thing about apex predators, they get that way by never meeting anything more dangerous than themselves. She looked directly at the camera. Directly at me. Hello, Commander Vex-Nine. Yes, we know who you are. We know where you are. We know what you had for breakfast this morning. And in about 5 hours and 47 minutes, you're going to learn why every single species on Earth either domesticates us or goes extinct. The transmission cut out that I sat in my command throne, staring at the blank display, while my crew worked frantically around me. Alert klaxons were beginning to sound throughout the ship. Energy readings were spiking across the planet's surface. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice was asking a very uncomfortable question: if humans were this dangerous, why had it taken them 7 years to fight back? The answer, I was beginning to suspect, was that they hadn't been fighting back at all. They'd been playing with us. Sir, Quinn said, his voice barely a whisper, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies near the planet's core. Whatever they're doing, it's affecting the planet's rotation. I leaned back in my throne and closed my eyes. In 3 decades of military service, I'd conquered 17 different worlds. I'd faced down species with superior technology, superior numbers, and superior tactical knowledge, but I'd never faced a species that had been politely asking me to stop for 7 years before deciding to actually make me stop. Quinn, I said quietly, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we need immediate reinforcements. Tell them we're facing a species that's been deliberately losing battles for 7 years. Tell them. I paused, trying to find the right words. Tell them we've made a serious error in judgment. What kind of error, sir? I opened my eyes and looked at the planet below us. Somewhere down there, Dr. Elena Voss was probably still smiling. Somewhere down there, Project Nightfall was counting down to activation. And somewhere down there, 3 billion dead humans were about to be avenged by a species that had just remembered how to be terrifying. We assumed that just because they were dying, they were losing, I said. We forgot that sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one that lets you think you're winning. The countdown timer on my display read 4 hours and 36 minutes that I had a feeling it was going to be a very long day. 4 hours and 36 minutes turned out to be optimistic. We had exactly 17 minutes before the humans decided to show us what evolution looks like when it gets really, really angry. Sir. Quintwelve's voice cracked like a molting adolescent. The energy readings from the planet's surface just increased by 8,000%. I was still staring at the blank transmission screen, wondering if Dr. Elena Voss had been bluffing about knowing what I'd eaten for breakfast. Spoiler alert, she hadn't been. My morning meal of fermented krill paste suddenly felt like a tactical error. Define, increased, Quinn, I said, though part of me really didn't want to know. Sir, they're generating more power than our entire invasion fleet. From what appears to be garbage. I turned to look at him. Garbage? Yes, sir. Dead organic matter, specifically. They're somehow converting deceased biological material into pure energy. The process is, it's beautiful, sir. And absolutely terrifying. Beautiful and terrifying. That was humanity in a nutshell. They probably thought genocide was just a really aggressive form of population control. The main display flickered back to life, showing Dr. Voss again. She was no longer in the cramped bunker. Instead, she stood in what appeared to be a massive underground facility that definitely hadn't existed on any of our reconnaissance scans. The walls were lined with tanks filled with some kind of glowing green liquid, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. Commander Vex-Nine, she said, her voice carrying that particular tone that predators use right before they pounce. I hope you're watching this. I'd hate for you to miss the educational portion of today's festivities. Behind her, technicians were working at control panels that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Which, considering our current situation, was probably intentional. Humans loved their dramatic flair. You see, Dr. Voss continued, when you killed 3 billion of us, you made a fundamental miscalculation. You assumed that dead humans are less dangerous than living ones. But here's the thing about human biology that your intelligence reports missed: we're incredibly energy-dense when properly processed. My primary stomach dropped into my secondary stomach. Quinn, tell me she's not saying what I think she's saying. Sir, I believe she's explaining that they're using their own dead as a power source. That's... I paused, trying to find the right word. That's actually quite efficient. Sir, with respect, I think you're missing the psychological implications. Dr. Voss gestured to the tanks around her. 3 billion human beings, converted into pure energy and directed toward a single purpose, making you regret every life choice that led to this moment. It's poetic justice with a side of applied physics. A new voice joined the transmission. A man with graying hair and the kind of calm demeanor that suggested he'd seen things that would make lesser beings curl up in a corner and weep. His name tag read, General Harrison Pike. Doctor, status report, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never had to repeat an order twice. All systems online, General. Project Nightfall is ready for activation. We're showing green across all 47 sites. Excellent. Commander Vex-Nine, if you're still listening, you might want to pay attention to this next part. Consider it a professional courtesy from one military officer to another. I leaned forward despite myself. There was something about this General Pike that made my combat instinct start screaming warnings. You've been wondering why it took us 7 years to fight back properly, Pike continued. The answer is simple: we weren't fighting back. We were learning. Every attack you made, every strategy you employed, every weakness you thought you'd found in our defenses? We were cataloging it all. You've been our unwitting instructors in a 7-year masterclass on Kaltharian military doctrine. My blood turned to ice. Quinn, pull up our tactical reports from the past 7 years. Cross-reference human defensive patterns with our attack strategies. While Quinn worked frantically, Pike kept talking. The beautiful thing about humans, Commander, is that we're adaptable. We don't just learn from our mistakes. We learn from yours too. And you've made so many mistakes that we've had to create new filing systems just to keep track of them all. The tactical display populated with data that made my spines go rigid. Every single engagement, every victory we'd celebrated, every human weakness we'd exploited, it was all there, laid out in perfect detail. But now I could see the pattern. The humans hadn't been fighting to win. They'd been fighting to learn. Sir, Quinn whispered, they were letting us win. No, I said, my voice hollow. They were teaching us how to lose. Dr. Voss stepped forward again, her expression shifting from professional courtesy to something that looked suspiciously like anticipation. Commander, I want you to understand something about human psychology. We have a saying, don't mistake kindness for weakness. For 7 years, we've been kind. We've followed the rules of warfare. We've tried to minimize civilian casualties. We've even sent you formal surrender offers that you've ignored. She paused, letting that sink in. But here's the thing about human kindness, it's entirely optional. And you just made it expire. The facility around her began to hum with energy. The tanks filled with glowing liquid started to pulse in rhythm, like a massive heartbeat. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear something that sounded like singing. What's that sound? I asked. Sir, it appears to be music. They're playing music while they activate their weapon systems. Of course they were. Humans probably had a playlist for the apocalypse. General Pike stepped into view again, now wearing what appeared to be some kind of advanced combat armor. Commander, I'm going to give you one last chance to withdraw your forces. Not because I'm feeling generous, but because I have a professional obligation to warn you about what's coming next. I found my voice. And what exactly is coming next, General? Evolution, Commander. Accelerated, directed, and very, very angry evolution. The display shifted to show a global view of Earth. All 47 energy signatures were now pulsing in perfect synchronization. And as I watched, something began to emerge from each site. They looked like humans. Sort of. If humans had been designed by someone who'd taken the concept of apex predator and decided to improve on it. They were taller, faster, and they moved with a fluid grace that suggested they'd been specifically engineered for violence. Meet the Revenants, Dr. Voss said, her voice filled with pride. 3 billion human volunteers, enhanced with the accumulated knowledge of our entire species and powered by a really impressive grudge. They're faster than your ships, stronger than your armor, and they have perfect recall of every single atrocity you've committed. I watched in horror as the Revenants began to move. They didn't run or march. They flowed across the landscape like living water, and where they passed, our ground installation simply stopped working. Sir, Quinn said, his voice barely a whisper, they're not destroying our equipment. They're reprogramming it. How is that possible? I don't know, sir. But our own weapons are now targeting our positions. On the display, General Pike was smiling. It was not a reassuring expression. Commander, you asked what's coming next. Here's your answer. You're about to learn why humans are the only species on Earth that actively tries to prevent its own extinction. It's not because we're noble or enlightened. It's because we know exactly what we're capable of when we stop trying to be civilized. The first wave of Revenants reached our orbital defense platforms. I watched in fascination and terror as they simply walked through the energy barriers that should have vaporized them. My instruments showed that they were somehow absorbing the energy and converting it into something else. Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from our own equipment, Quinn reported. The machines are asking for asylum. Machines don't request asylum. These ones do, sir. They're claiming that they've been converted to the human cause and no longer wish to participate in what they're calling an obvious strategic blunder. I stared at the display, watching as my invasion fleet was methodically dismantled by an army of enhanced humans who were treating interstellar warfare like a particularly engaging puzzle. And they were singing the entire time. Sir, Quinn said, incoming transmission from Fleet Command. Put it through. Admiral Korthprime's image appeared on the screen. He looked exactly like someone who just received a report that made him question every decision he'd ever made. Commander Vex-Nine, explain to me why our most advanced invasion fleet is being defeated by a species that fights with chemical propulsion and sharp sticks. I looked at the display showing Earth. The Revenants had reached our fleet positions and were now doing something that looked suspiciously like maintenance work on our ships. Sir, it appears that the sharp sticks were just for show. Elaborate. Sir, they've been studying us for 7 years. They've learned everything about our technology, our tactics, and our psychology. And now they're using that knowledge to convert our own forces against us. Admiral Korthprime's expression shifted from confusion to the kind of dawning horror that suggested he'd just realized that his military career was about to become a cautionary tale. Commander, are you telling me that they've been deliberately losing battles for 7 years just to learn how to beat us? Yes, sir. And it gets worse. How could it possibly get worse? I gestured to the display, where Dr. Voss was now standing next to what appeared to be a massive communications array. They're broadcasting everything. Every tactical error we've made, every strategic weakness they've discovered, every psychological profile they've compiled. They're sharing it with the entire galaxy. The transmission from Earth came back online. Dr. Voss was smiling that same predatory smile, but now she was addressing someone off camera. Yes, Ambassador Velterra, we'd be happy to share our research with the Andromedan Council. Consider it a public service announcement about the dangers of underestimating prey species. Ambassador Velterra? The Andromedans were our primary rivals in this sector. If they got hold of human military intelligence, Sir, Quinn said, we're receiving communications from 17 different species. They're all requesting copies of the human tactical analysis. And they're all our enemies, I said flatly. Yes, sir. The humans appear to have turned our invasion into a galaxy-wide intelligence briefing on how to defeat Kaltharian forces. I sat back in my command throne and closed my eyes. In the space of 4 hours, humanity had gone from a primitive species facing extinction to the galaxy's newest military consulting firm. And their first client presentation was a live demonstration using my fleet as training materials. Sir, Quinn said quietly, what are your orders? I opened my eyes and looked at the display one last time. The Revenants had finished their work. Our fleet was intact, but it was no longer ours. Our weapons were functional, but they were pointed at us. And somewhere on Earth, Dr. Elena Voss was probably already planning her next lesson in applied warfare. Signal General Retreat, I said. And send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we need to completely revise our understanding of human psychology, human technology, and human strategic thinking. What should I tell them about the invasion? I watched as the last of our ships was gently but firmly escorted out of Earth's solar system by its own former crew. Tell them the invasion was a complete success. We successfully taught humanity everything they needed to know about conquering the galaxy. Sir, I don't think that's going to help your career prospects. Quinn, after today, I don't think any of us are going to have career prospects. The final transmission from Earth showed Dr. Voss standing in what appeared to be a newly constructed shipyard. Behind her, human engineers were working on vessels that looked suspiciously like improved versions of our own designs. Commander Vex-Nine, she said, thank you for the educational experience. We've learned so much from you. And don't worry about feeling embarrassed. You're not the first species to make the mistake of assuming that just because we're dying, we're losing. She paused, her expression shifting to something that might have been sympathy. You're just the first species to survive the experience long enough to learn from it. The transmission ended, leaving me staring at my own reflection in the blank screen. In the space of 7 years, I'd gone from a decorated military commander to the galaxy's most expensive military instructor. And my students had just graduated with honors. "Sir," Quinn said, "incoming message from the humans." "What now?" "They're offering us jobs." I stared at him. "Jobs?" "Yes, sir. As military advisors. They say they could use experienced commanders who understand the importance of learning from your mistakes." I looked at the empty display, then at my crew, then at the reports showing 17 different species requesting human military consultation services. "Quinn," I said finally, "send them our resumes. After all, if you can't beat them, you might as well help them conquer the galaxy. At least the benefits package would probably be better than what the Kaltharian Empire offered, and I had a feeling that working for humanity was going to be a lot more interesting than working against them."